Continue our discussion on the training of trainees who are on the smaller scope path. So in the last sessions we'd seen the characteristics of an optimum human rebirth, and also we had seen how to cultivate mindfulness of death and impermanence. So we use that understanding further to get a proper understanding of the suffering nature of our existence. And we'll see in today's session why it is necessary to understand the suffering aspect of our existence, and what are the specific and the general kinds of sufferings that characterize the existence in different realms, beings in different realms, whether it's the animal realm or the human realm or the god realms, the hungry ghost realm, or the realm of the hell beings. So specifically in today's session, we'll look at the suffering that one could experience if one were to be reborn in the lower realms, the three lower realms, which are the animal realm, the realm of the hell beings, and the realm of the hungry ghosts. So before we proceed with our discussion, let's just calm our minds, distill our minds, just clear the chatter in our minds, and also set a proper motivation for the session. So as we do for every session, just use the 7-point of Vairochana posture to calm your minds. We'll do a breathing meditation, or what we in the previous session we had seen how to cultivate what is called anapanasati, or mindfulness of the breath. So we'll use that meditation today again, and we'll try and develop single point concentration, and then we'll use that concentrated mind to set a proper motivation for the session. So use the 7-point Vairochana posture, cross-legged, full lotus posture if you can. If not, half lotus. If not, you can sit in a regular sukhasana or just a normal cross-legged posture. If you're sitting on a chair, make sure that your back is erect and the shoulders are straight, chin tucked in slightly, and the tip of the tongue resting against the upper row of teeth, just behind the upper row of teeth. And keep your eyes closed. I think it's better just to cut out the distractions at this stage of our practice. I think it's more helpful. You're actually advised to keep the eyes slightly open, and the gaze of the eyes is pointing down the tip of your nose in the space in front of you. That is to prevent people from just dozing off during the course of the meditation. But our meditation is not going to be that long, so we can keep our eyes closed just to cut out all kinds of distractions, the visible distractions. Okay, so sit in this posture, and then just clear your mind of all thoughts that pertain to your regular routine, and bring the focus of your mind to the subject of and the topic that we are going to discuss today. So just remind yourself that you're now studying the training that is unique, that is specific to trainees on the small scope path of the Lamrim. Just remind yourself about that. And now bring the focus of your mind to the area between the tip of your nose and the upper lip, and observe the sensations that you experience there as you breathe in and breathe out. Now turn the focus of your mind to your in breath. Observe which nostril you're breathing in through, and observe the sensations that you experience in that nostril. Now turn the focus of your mind to your out breath. Just observe the sensations that you experience uh, in the nostril through which you are breathing out. Now we'll count the in breath and the out breath to aid with the concentration. So count the in breath as 1, 1, and then out breath 2, 2, or then in breath as 3, 3, and so on till 10. And then repeat the process again. Now remind yourself that you've been born in this samsara for an infinite number of times. You've taken infinite rebirths in this samsara since beginningless time. And you've been cycling through the different realms and the different planes in the samsara without having liberated yourself. So in this lifetime, we are blessed with this fortunate human rebirth characterized by the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. And we've also connected with our Guru, the Guru Shakyamuni. And we have access to his doctrine, his teachings. And we also have the good fortune of being assisted in our study of this doctrine by the Sangha, the Supreme Assembly of the Buddha's disciples. So we have this wonderful fortune in this lifetime. But at the same time, we can't be certain that this fortune will abide for a long time. Indeed, if we were to die and the timing of our death is uncertain. It could happen anytime. Could be today, tomorrow, could be a week from now, it could be several years from now. If we were to die today or tomorrow, would we be prepared for our next life, next rebirth? It's more than likely that because of the negative karma that we may have from the past, we are reborn in the lower realms, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, or the hell beings as hell beings. And there's tremendous suffering that characterizes life in these lower realms. So would we be able to endure the suffering that characterizes life in these realms? If by some good fortune we are reborn in the fortunate realms of either as humans or as gods, we know that even the human realm is characterized by a lot of suffering, the suffering of birth, aging, illness, death, and a lot of mental suffering, anxiety, frustration, through various events that crop up in our lives. And the realm of gods is also characterized by suffering at the time of death. And once you expend, live out the number of years that one is allowed um, to stay in the god realms, one falls back in one of the lower realms and then has to experience the same kind of suffering. So there's nothing to be thrilled about. We can't trust rebirths in the higher realms of humans or gods, because even there's a lot of suffering. So we have this wonderful fortune of being born as humans, with access to the doctrine, with access to the teacher and the Sangha. And we have this wonderful intelligence, discriminating awareness, which helps us understand the shortcomings, the flaws, the deficiencies of existence in samsara, benefits of being liberated from this suffering in samsara. So we should all aspire for that kind of liberation from samsara. At the same time, aspiring for mere individual liberation is not sufficient. It's not an adequate goal, spiritual goal. Because if we work for only individual liberation, then while we are free from suffering in samsara, we still have our dear ones, our friends, relatives, our family members still trapped in samsara, not knowing how to liberate themselves from the suffering in samsara. That would be quite unwise of us to pursue that as a spiritual goal, mere individual liberation as a spiritual goal. So we should aspire to attain a goal, a state which helps us not just free ourselves from suffering in samsara, but also all the other sentient beings from help them liberate themselves from suffering in samsara. So, what can aid us? Who can guide us on this path towards this kind of a state? It's none other than the three jewels: the Buddha, the enlightened teacher, the Dharma, and the scriptures, and the realizations in the mind streams of the enlightened beings, Arhants, Bodhisattvas, Pratyek Buddhas, and other practitioners. And the Sangha, the Supreme Assembly, people who guide us on this path, spiritual path. So the three jewels are the ultimate source of guidance for us on this journey towards attaining a state where we can then develop the capacity to help ourselves and other sentient beings liberate, free themselves from suffering in samsara. So this is the ultimate source of guidance. It's the ultimate source of refuge. So let's all take refuge in this, in the three jewels. So you can recite the short refuge prayer. Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddha, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha. Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddha, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha. Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddha, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha. So we'll also recite the Bodhicitta prayer. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my practice of giving and other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So with that aspiration, we set a good motivation for the session. So as I said, in today's session, we're going to explore the nature of suffering that characterizes the three lower realms, the animal realm, the realm of hungry ghosts, and the realm of hell beings. So we'll begin our discussion by understanding what is the necessity to explore this nature of suffering. So before we proceed, this is the part of the Lamrim text that we are exploring at the moment. So after having begun to rely on a spiritual guide, we try and understand the how to extract the essence from our optimum human rebirth. Optimum human rebirth that is characterized by the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. And that section has 3 parts to it. So it's the first part that we are dealing with, training our minds in the stages of the path shared with the small scope. And within that, how to develop a yearning for good rebirth is the section that we are dealing with. And that has 2 parts. So we've explored the first part, how to remember that our present rebirth will not last long, and how to develop, how to cultivate the mindfulness of death and impermanence. So it's the second part that we'll explore today, thinking about what sort of happiness or suffering one can have in our next rebirth in either of the 2 types of migrations. So there are 2 types of migrations. There's the fortunate migration in the realm of gods or humans, or there's the miserable migration in the 3 lower realms, animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings. So this is what we are going to look at. So that has 2 parts to it, the meditation on the suffering of the lower realms and the meditation of the suffering of the higher realms. So we're going to look at the meditation on the suffering of the lower realms. So as I said, why? We start our discussion by understanding why it is necessary to get a grasp of this aspect of our existence. As you know, that the first sermon that the Buddha preached, the first sermon after he got enlightened, in a place called Bodh Gaya in eastern India, and then he contemplated how exactly he's going to share his insights with his disciples, and who would be the most appropriate disciples to receive his first teaching. So he identified that there were a group of ascetics who uh, who practiced this extreme asceticism along with him. And Buddha practiced extreme asceticism for a period of almost 6 years before he uh, abandoned that path and realized that it's not what will lead him to wisdom that can free him from samsara. So he took up a different path, and then the other friends co mendicants who were practicing asceticism with him, they abandoned him. Uh, and then Buddha went along on his own path, and the other practitioners went on their own path. But then after the Buddha got enlightened, he chose these five bhikshus or disciples of his as the most appropriate vehicles to receive his first teaching. And then he gave them the first teaching, which is called the Dharmachakra Pravartana Sutra. And he preached the Four Noble Truths to them. And as you know, the first, there are two pairs of truths in the Four Noble Truths. So the first pair talks about the truth of suffering and the causes of suffering, the truth of the causes of suffering. So the first one is the effect or the result, and the second one is the cause. And the second pair talks about the truth of cessations and the path that leads to the cessation or the cause of that cessation. So these two pairs make up the Four Noble Truths. But the teaching began with explanation of what suffering is. So in order for us to get rid of suffering, one needs to understand what exactly the suffering is that we talk about. So the Buddha had talked about three kinds of suffering: the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive conditioned suffering. So these are things that we'll explore later. But there was a reason why he explained the truth of suffering first before he spoke about the truth of the causes of suffering. Is because it's an essential aspect of our existence in samsara. We need to be comfortable with this fact that no matter where you are born in samsara, what conditions you're born in, it might appear to us that we're born in very favorable conditions, but even then, suffering is an essential aspect of our existence. So we may not have the first kind of suffering temporarily, the suffering of suffering, which is essentially the physical kind of suffering. But there's suffering of change that we are experiencing. There's also the all-pervasive conditioned suffering, which is not very far away. It's just around the corner. So it is critical that we understand the essence of suffering, its causes, before we proceed to eliminate it. And specifically because we are practicing the Mahayana path. So on the Mahayana path, or what is also called the Bodhisattva Yana path, it starts with cultivating what is called the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta. So that is the first milestone that defines the paths. So once you've cultivated the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, you're said to have entered the Mahayana or the Bodhisattva paths. So then you start off with the path of accumulation, then preparation, then the path of seeing, meditation, and the path of no more learning. So those are the five paths that you progress through before you get completely enlightened. So in order to cultivate this mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, compassion is an essential cause. And what is compassion? Compassion is an attitude which says that may all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's an attitude that can't bear others being tormented by suffering. So in order to understand or cultivate this attitude of compassion, one must know exactly how what suffering is. And in order to understand the suffering of other sentient beings, one needs to understand one's own suffering uh, before, prior to understanding others' sufferings. So that's the reason why it's important for us, or practitioners of the Mahayana path or the Bodhisattva path. We need to get a proper grasp of this nature of suffering, so that we can then cultivate the attitude of compassion, which then would become the cause for us to cultivate the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta. And bodhicitta, along with wisdom, or the practice of wisdom, will help us advance on the spiritual path through the five paths of preparation, accumulation, seeing, meditation, no more learning, before we attain the state of a completely enlightened Buddha. So, in a way, this understanding of suffering is kind of the foundation of the spiritual practice. So, to cultivate bodhicitta, one needs to understand suffering, and one also needs to understand uh, what is the exact nature of suffering one experiences in the lower realms and in the higher realms. So, what are the general kinds of sufferings in the animal realm, for example? What are the general kinds of suffering, and what are the specific kinds of suffering? Similarly, uh, for the realm of hungry ghosts and the realm of the hell beings. So we need to, you know, we need to start off by getting a proper grasp of this suffering. So that, as I said, is the foundation of a practice as a practitioner of the Bodhisattva path, and it also defines the starting point for the starting point of the training for a trainee who is training on the in the smaller scope. So because as a trainee who is training in the smaller scope, his objective, his spiritual objective, is to um, conduct his practice in a manner that he attains a higher rebirth in the future lives. High rebirth meaning rebirth in the human realm or the God realm. Why? Because he's aware about aware of the suffering that one can experience in the lower realms. So a proper understanding of the suffering that one experiences in the lower realm is critical for you to understand the training that is specific to the small scope. And as a Bodhisattva Yana practitioner, one needs to have a comprehensive understanding of the smaller scope, as well as the medium scope and the higher scope, so that we can then assist uh, trainees of different kinds of dispositions. So we need to have a proper understanding of what the small scope training implies. And for that, one needs to have a proper understanding of the suffering that one experiences in the lower realms. So before we proceed, there's one thing that we need to kind of acquaint ourselves with, which is the Buddhist presentation, the Buddhist cosmological presentation of the universe or the world. So in Buddhism, we talk about 31 different planes of existence. And most of these planes of existence are inhabited by gods. And then there are the five lowermost planes. So there's the the plane where the humans inhabit, and then the demigods, and then you have the beings from the unfortunate realms, which is the animals, the hungry ghosts, and the hell beings. And above the plane of the humans are the planes that are inhabited by gods, or the devas. And the devas inhabit three different kinds of realms. So there are gods who inhabit the realm, the desire realm, which we are part of. There are gods from the form realm, and there are gods from the formless realm. So to be reborn in the form and the formless realm, one has to cultivate the practice of meditative absorptions. So based on what kind of meditative absorption states or samadhis that you cultivated, one could be reborn in either the form or the formless realm. So we'll just have a quick look at that. So as the slide explains, there are 31 different planes spanning 3 different realms: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, and inhabited by 6 different kinds of sentient beings: hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and demigods. So 5 of these 31 planes are inhabited by hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and demigods. The rest 26 planes are inhabited by 3 different kinds of gods. So there are the desire realm gods that inhabit 6 planes from the desire realm, and then there are the form realm gods inhabiting 16 planes from the form realm, and then there are the formless realm gods who cultivate specific kinds of samadhis and who inhabit 4 different planes in the formless realm. So so this graphic here kind of explains the distribution of these 31 planes. So from plane number 28 to 31 is the formless realm. 12 to 27 is form realm. 6 to 11 is the desire realm, and then the lower 1 to 5 are inhabited by humans, demigods, hungry ghosts, animals, and hells. So the 4 formless realms that I spoke about, which are accessed only by yogis who cultivated specific kinds of samadhis, specific kind of meditative absorptions. So in this table on the left-hand side, you see what those meditative absorptions are, what kind of object these meditative absorptions use. So the first one uses infinite space to cultivate this meditative absorption state. The second one is infinite consciousness. The third one is nothingness. And the highest plane in the samsara is called the plane of neither perception nor non-perception. So inhabitants of these 4 planes in the formless realms, they do not have a gross physical body. It's only mind that they possess. So since they do not have any kind of physical body here, they are not able to listen to any kind of dharma teachings, because dharma teachings is sound, and sound is a physical object, and these planes does not have any kind of material form. They do not support any kind of material form. So these are the 4 formless realms, and then this is the table which presents the 16 realms 16 planes that belong to the form realm. So 4 different kinds of meditative absorptions again, first to the 4th, and the 1st, 2nd, and the 3rd meditative absorption. They have 3 levels again. So there's the highest degree of the meditative absorptions, there's a medium degree of the meditative absorption, and a minor degree of meditative absorption. And then based on what state of meditative absorption you've cultivated, you could be born in any of these 16 planes in the form realm. So the first plane in this formless realm, realm is called the retinue of Brahma. The second one is called ministers of Brahma, and so on. So there are different kinds of gods or devas that inhabit these 16 different planes. So the highest plane in the form realm is called the plane of the peerless devas. So these planes are inhabited by yogis who cultivated what is called the 4th meditative absorption, or the 4th dhyana. So these are the 16 planes from the form realm. And then there are gods that inhabit the realm that we are part of, or the bizarre realm. So there are 6 different kinds of gods here in the desire realm. So there are gods that belong uh, to the heaven of the devas, or the 4 great kings. And then there's the heaven of the 33 gods. So the heaven of the 33 gods is the heaven where uh, Shakyamuni Buddha's mother was reborn after passing away. Uh, she uh, she passed away 7 days after Buddha's birth, and the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, after having attained enlightenment, then through the power of his meditation, samadhi, he ascended to this plane, and he gave dharma instructions to his mother, Mahamaya, and that body of instructions that he preached in this plane to his mother, that came to be called as the Abhidharma, the 3rd basket of the Tripitaka. So then there are other heavens also, the god of the realm, the heaven of the Yama Devas, the contented Devas, the Devas delighting in creation, and the Devas wielding power over the creation of others. So uh, different 6 different kinds of gods that inhabit this desire realm. And then the 4 miserable planes. You have the plane of the hell beings, the plane of the animals, the plane of the hungry ghosts, and each one, um, the rebirth in each of these planes is kind of triggered by a specific cause. So as we'll look at the causes when we look at the suffering of each of suffering that one experiences in each of these realms. So these are the 4 miserable planes, 4 miserable planes in the desire realm. So before we proceed, all of you at least would have seen this uh, picture, this graphic. It's called the Wheel of Life, or the Bhava Chakra, about how this picture, it was a painting that was commissioned by Shakyamuni Buddha himself to uh, explain uh, the uh, the 12 different links that trigger um, rebirth in samsara, and the different kinds of planes that make a that are part of this samsara, and uh, the 12 different links then kind of explain how one uh, goes through the process of being reborn endlessly in this cycle of samsara. So within this bhava chakra, you'll find that the inner part of the wheel, it has pictorial description of the different planes, the different realms where the sentient beings could be born. So there's a picture. Part of the picture explains uh, pictorially the kind of suffering that one could experience in the hell, in the hells, or in as animals or as hungry ghosts. And then the upper part of the wheel, it explains, it has a pictorial kind of description of the realm of gods and demigods and humans. And the Bhava Chakra is held by the Lord of Death, or Yama. And in the right hand corner of the Bhava Chakra, you can see Shakyamuni Buddha, or a Buddha, showing the path out of this grasp of the Lord of Death, a path that can help you escape the grasp of the Lord of Death. So, the suffering that one could experience in the lower realms being the realm of the hell beings, the realm of the hungry ghost, and the realm of the animals. So, the first one we'll explore is the suffering in the realm of hell beings. So, here you can see uh, on the left hand side of this picture, you can see 8 different kinds of hells. Uh, where the hell beings are being scorched by heat, and then on the right hand side you can see the suffering in the cold hells. So within the realm of the hell beings, there are different kinds of hells. There are hot hells and cold hells. So we'll see how many hot hells there are and how many cold hells there are, and what kind of suffering one can experience in these hot and cold hells. So, as I said, there are the 8 hot hells, and then these are surrounded by what are called the force and occasional hells, which you can find in the realm of humans itself. So, suffering in the hot hells, the first category of the hot hells, the 8 hot hells. So, what is the general nature of the suffering that one can experience in the hot hells? So in general, hot hells are quite unbearable because of 3 attributes that describe the beings that are born in the realm of in these realms. So the beings that are born here, they have an enormously big body. So greater surface area means that the suffering that you experience from being burned is greater. So the suffering of having a body, the thing being burnt, because the body is enormous, you have enormous suffering. And then the property of the flesh of the beings that are born here again leads to a lot of suffering. The flesh has very low tolerance, the same tolerance as that of a newborn baby, and that's the reason even you can't handle even the slightest amount of heat. Um, so you're very sensitive to heat, have very little tolerance to heat, and because of that, you will experience more suffering. And the agent that brings about the suffering, the fire that causes you to burn, causes your flesh to burn, that fire is intense and extremely hot. So all these factors imply that the suffering that you experience in the realm of the hell beings in the hot hells is extremely unbearable. So there are these 8 hot hells then. So here you can see a pictorial description of what happens in the hot hells, being boiled in a cauldron of intense cauldron, which is heated by intense fire, and the guardians of the hells which ensure that you can't escape that suffering. So these are the 8 hot hells, and you have the hell of the continual resurrection, all the way to the 8th hot hell, which is called the hell without respite. And the cause for rebirth in each of these hells is kind of indicated here. For example, the cause for rebirth in the first hell, first hot hell, the hell of the continual resurrection, evil karma, or for ordained people like us, if we commit minor misdeeds, we're talking about just minor misdeeds uh, against the pratimoksha vows or the individual liberation vows that we've taken. We transgress those vows and we do not care about it, and we do not make any effort to kind of purify those transgressions. Then those kind of minor misdeeds can lead to rebirth in one of these hot hells, the hell called the hell of continual resurrection. And the lifespan of beings that are born in these hells are enormously long. So compared to a human life, uh, the lifespan of a being in the first hell, first hot hell, is 1.62 trillion human years. Enormously long time, long time. And the lifespans kind of progressively increase as you go down this table. And the 8th hot hell, the hell without respite, you can see that the cause that is indicated here is for ordained people here. not caring whether we break major pratimoksha vows. So we have major and minor vows, and if we engage in activities that lead to transgressions of one of our major vows, then we could be reborn in this hell. So the hell without respite, the suffering here is greater, much greater than all the seven hot hells described prior to it. So the bodies of beings born in this hell, um, they're essentially in the nature of fire. They're indistinguishable from fire. One can't really tell whether it's fire or a sentient form. So there's enormous suffering through heat that you experience here, and the lifespans are enormously long. So these 8 hotels are then surrounded by what are called the 4 surrounding hells. They got really fancy names here. The fiery trench, the swamp of putrid corpses, the plain of razor sharp knives, and the uncrossable torrent. And similar to the previous table, you have a presentation of the 4 surrounding hells here and the lifespans that being born in one of these surrounding hells could have. So, for example, if you're born in the first surrounding hell, which is called the fiery trench, the cause could be you're born in the hot hells, and then immediately after exiting the hot hells, then you're born straight back into one of these surrounding hells. So it's kind of a progression. You're born in the 8 hot hells, and then you progress to rebirth in one of the surrounding hells. And then the lifespan indicated here is many hundreds of thousands of years of human years. So these are the 4 surrounding hells. The uncrossable torrent, the 4th surrounding hell. There's a description of this hell. So here you have moving water which is mixed with fire, and it burns and cooks the bodies of beings who are trying to transit through this hell. So again, enormous suffering here. And then there are the 8 cold hells. So the 8 cold hells, the general suffering that a being would experience in one of these 8 cold hells. So these 8 cold hells are characterized by the existence of snow-covered mountains, which are kilometers and kilometers wide and high. And there's no light from the sun or the moon or fire and so forth. So there's no heat or there's no warmth. And it's so dark here that you can't even notice the movement of your own body parts, your own arms. And the ground is perpetually frozen. It's like a glacier, the ground beneath your feet. And there is a blizzard that is continuously raging on, and cold winds, extremely cold winds blowing. And there's no means of keeping oneself warm. So there's no fire, there's no sun, no clothes, nothing. And similar to the 8 hot hells, each of the cold hells also, the later cold hell is colder than the previous one. So these are the 8 cold hells. The first one is called the hell of blisters, and the 8th one is called the hell of great lotus-like cracks. And the lifespans indicated here in the first cold hell, 9.6 trillion years. Whereas if you're reborn in the 8th cold hell, the hell of great lotus-like cracks, your lifespan could be as long as 12.3 billion trillion years. So the hell of blisters, the hell of burst blisters, the hell of chattering teeth, the hell of lamentations, the hell of groans, the hell of utpala-like cracks, the hell of lotus-like cracks, the hell of great lotus-like cracks. So here, the nature of suffering is that your flesh cracks, it develops 100 or 1,000 times more lotus-like cracks. So extremely cold, flesh is always frozen and develops cracks. and you have to live here for an extremely long time, almost 12 billion trillion years. And then there are the occasional hells. So these are hells in the human realms, on the ocean shore, and so forth. So very specific kind of hells one experiences through specific kind of karma that one has created. So the example that is cited here is of a butcher who, on the advice of a sage, Arya Katyayana, uh, the butcher had decided he'd taken vows not to kill at night, but he could not extend the vow to daytime, and because of that, uh, during the night time, the place where he stayed, that would be converted into the palace, and he would have the assistance of four goddesses, and he would experience a lot of bliss at night, like a god. But by daytime, the palace would then be converted into uh, a hell with intense fire, and the goddesses assisting him would be converted into four ferocious dogs. They would bite the person and eat his flesh. So a very specific kind of hell being described here because of the specific karma that the butcher had created. So this is a presentation of the suffering that one experiences in the realm of hell beings. Now the suffering that one experiences in the realm of hungry ghosts. So as you can see here, the hungry ghost pictorially depicted as someone who has an extremely large tummy and very small mouth, and knotted throat, um, and they're forever suffering because of heat, cold, hunger, thirst, exhaustion, and fear. So the hungry ghost plain has absolutely no vegetation. There are no trees, there's no grass, there's no water, and the whole ground is made of copper slag, metal slag, and is scorched by sun. And the bodies of and the limbs of hungry ghosts are most ungainly, as you'd seen in this picture. The hair is matted, the heads are extremely large, the face is wrinkled, and the necks are extremely thin and are unable to support their heads. Uh, they have huge mountain-like bodies and an uneven number of legs and arms, very thin, just like stalks, and mostly they're not able to support them. And then they experience extreme difficulty while walking. They find it more difficult than old people in the human realm would find, uh, and they find it difficult to walk. And their bodies are extremely weak, and they're forever exhausted because of lack of nutrition. And for many years, they haven't found anything to drink. They haven't found anything to eat. So, because of lack of moist drinks, they have no moisture in their bodies. There's no blood. There's no pus, and so forth. Uh, and because they have had no food or drink for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, they experience a lot of suffering. And because of their very fragile bodies, they experience a lot of suffering through heat and cold also. In the heat of summer, even the gentle moonlight burns them, and uh, in winter time, sunlight makes them feel cold. So they have this very unique kind of suffering. And to speak about the specific kind of suffering of the beings in the realm of hungry ghosts, there, the hungry ghosts experience suffering because of external obscurations, internal obscurations, and then obscurations from knots. So, what is this suffering from external obscurations? So, hungry ghosts with external obscurations, uh, they have this appearance, mirage-like appearance of water, and illusion of trees laden with fruit. So they trudge along warily long distances in search of fruit and water. But when they reach there, things just vanish. So they're prevented from enjoying water and fruit, also by guards, uh, you know, armed guards who prevent them physically from enjoying the fruit and the water. So there's a lot of physical exhaustion and mental depression that goes with external obscurations experience. And then there are the ghosts with internal obscurations. So these ghosts occasionally find some food, but they can't get the food past their mouths. So then necks have knots in them. And because of these knots, they're unable to swallow any food that they follow that they find. So these ghosts have some food available to them, but they can't swallow it because of the knots in their mouths, in their necks. Um, and then eh, they may find something to drink, but the drink is extremely disgusting. They have rancid pus from their own goiters for drink. And the food that they take, uh, that takes on different kinds of forms, which then brings about enormous suffering to these beings. So the hungry goes with internal obscurations because of the different karma that they've accumulated. Uh, for food, they have burning pieces of iron, grain husks, extremely rough, that can causing injury in the mouth. There's pus of blood that they have access to drink, and then there's their own flesh that they can eat. So these are the sufferings that the ghosts with internal obscurations experience. And then there are the ghosts with obscurations from knots. So hungry ghosts with these obscurations, they have a vertical row of three knots in the necks, in the just like in the previous picture that we've seen, and that causes them infinite suffering. So see in this picture, there's the hungry ghost with the three knots in his neck. So there's the suffering that the ghost with obscurations from knots experience. So what are the causes that lead to rebirth in the realm of hungry ghosts? Um, Being extremely miserly with one's possessions, not parting with any of your resources, not sharing your resources with anyone, coveting other people's resources, enormous covetousness, and then a great attachment to one's possessions, uh, and which means that you don't part with them, you don't share those easily, and then preventing other people from practicing generosity. Um, Also, stealing other people's possessions, stealing offerings made to the sangha. So uh, that's enormously negative karma if you steal offerings made to the sangha. Abusing charity or and other forms of engaging in actions that mean that you take things that are not given to you. So these are the causes that can lead one to rebirth in the realm of hungry ghosts. So that is the suffering of the hell beings and the suffering of the hungry ghosts. So we've run out of time. We'll discuss the suffering of the animals in our next session. Uh, so before we pause for the session, maybe we just do a short dedication. So and just uh, relax yourself and close your eyes. Just adopt the 7 point Vairocana posture and just still your mind. Uh, just calm your mind. Just do a short breathing meditation for about a minute, um, and recollect the discussion that we've had today, the suffering of the lower ramps. So first, just concentrate using your breath. And then recollect why it is necessary that we understand the suffering nature of samsara and just recollect the presentation of the 31 different planes in samsara. Specifically recollect the planes in the desire realm. So within the desire realm, recollect the lower, the planes that are inhabited by beings from the miserable rebirths. So the realm of the animals, the realm of the plane of the animals, the plane of hungry beings, hungry ghosts, and the plane of the hell beings. And recollect the general and the specific kind of suffering that we could experience in the hell realm and the realm of hungry ghosts. So remember that in this lifetime, we have the fortune of being born as a human, and not just that, we have access to the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. But recollect from our previous discussion that that could easily take away these 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. So it's imperative that we use this lifetime to ensure that we prevent rebirth in the lower realms. So generate that resolve that we use whatever resources we have access to in this lifetime to advance our spiritual practice so as to prevent rebirth in the lower realms. So with that kind of resolution and um, the time that we spent engaging in this discussion on the suffering in the lower realms, we've accumulated some merit. So let's dedicate that merit directed towards a proper goal. And the proper goal we have seen is the goal of complete enlightenment, state of complete enlightenment, uh, so that we can assist other sentient beings liberate themselves from the suffering of samsara. So, due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a completely enlightened Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings into that enlightened state without exception. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that does not arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Okay, with that dedication, we'll pause here. Um, Thank you for your time and patience. Enjoy the rest of your day. Namo Buddhaya. Thank you.